Hey, it's Brian over at Cross Country Mortgage. Hope you're having a great start to your week. I wanted to share some information with you about closing costs and what it looks like to purchase a home. So this is specifically about buying a home. What we get a lot of questions about, hey, how come I talked to lender X, Y, or Z over here, and they said that they offer a loan with no closing costs? Well, what I wanted to do is share that there's like 7 different parties involved to close the mortgage and to close on the purchase of your new home. So let's just go through those to start with, and then I'll help you understand kind of how a lender can have a no closing cost scenario or other things that are effectively manipulated in the advertising of a mortgage. So first off, obviously there's a lender involved. So lenders, like us as a mortgage company, we typically charge a processing fee and an underwriting fee. We'll see a flood certificate is something we have to order, and then a credit report. Those are typically the majority of the costs that we have. The number 2 most important thing is going to be the appraiser. A lot of people think that the appraisal is a cost incurred by the mortgage company. It's not. So we have to follow some federal rules. We order the appraisal through a third-party appraisal management company, and that appraiser that is assigned the order, they all charge different amounts. So if you're buying a home with a conventional mortgage, it might be $400 to $500. Appraiser number 1 might charge $450. Appraiser number 2 might charge $475 or $500. So that appraiser, the charges they differ based on the individual appraiser that accepts the order. But the appraisal, what they're doing is they're actually verifying that the property is in livable condition. So they'll physically go to the home and inspect the interior and the exterior most of the time. Additionally, after they're done with that, they're going to go back to their office and they're going to put together an analysis of all the closed comparables, typically within the previous 6 to 12 months of time looking backwards, usually within a 1 mile radius or so of the subject property. And then they're going to prepare that report and send that back to us. So first we have the lender's cost, then we have the appraiser cost. Then the third thing that you're going to have as a home buyer, at least in the Chicagoland market, is the buyer's attorney. So your buyer's attorney is there to make sure that everything in your real estate contract that has been agreed to actually happens. So if the seller agrees to make repairs or provide certain personal property or maybe close on the home, and you're going to allow the seller to live in the home. We call that post-closing possession. Your attorney will be there to help make sure that they leave when they're supposed to. So the attorney is looking to make sure that everything that you agreed to is accomplished and to make sure that everything happens when it's supposed to happen. They're also going to review the fourth expense, which is your title insurance. So there's a title insurance company involved. That title insurance company, what they're doing is they're checking the public record to make sure that the seller has the legal right to sell the property to you, and that there's no liens on the property that would prohibit them from selling it and you from buying it. And when we get title insurance on your purchase, we're actually checking title for your social security number as well. So if there is a tax lien or there's maybe a judgment that doesn't show up on a credit report, it will show up on the title insurance if it's tagged and associated with your social security number. So the title insurance is super important. What a lot of people don't understand is in the Chicagoland market, it's customary to allow the seller's attorney to choose the title insurance company that all the parties work with. So when the seller's attorney chooses that title company, we don't know what the costs are for that title insurance company until we get the title report back for that property and the invoice that goes along with it. So title insurance is there to protect you and everybody else involved. You have to provide, the seller has to provide you with what's called owner's title insurance. And then you as the buyer getting a mortgage has to provide the lender with what's called a lender's title insurance policy. You can't provide the lender with the title insurance unless the seller provides you with an owner's title policy. So your attorney and the seller's attorney and the title insurance company all work together to make sure that all of that can happen. Let's see, number 5 is your homeowner's insurance. So your homeowner's insurance company, you can choose whoever you want to work with. You can work with whatever company and whatever agent you choose, so long as the coverages are satisfactory to the lender. So the mortgage company has to underwrite the homeowner's insurance, just like they have to underwrite the title insurance and make sure that it's satisfactory to their guidelines for the loan program you're applying for. And then let's see, number 6 is going to be the county and the state, so basically the government. What will end up happening is you have to pay for recording fees. Recording fees are there to record the mortgage and the the deed with the county that says that you now own the property and that you owe something against it. So if you bought a home for $100,000, the deed is going to say that you own that home for $100,000, and then the mortgage is going to say you owe $100,000 against it to lender X or what have you. Number 7 is going to be the state of Illinois. You have to pay transfer taxes, and this also includes the county and sometimes the city. So if you buy in the city of Chicago, there's a pretty hefty transfer tax associated with buying a home that both the buyer and seller have to pay for in the city of Chicago. But the state of Illinois will be paid a transfer tax as well. Sometimes, most of the time, it's paid by the seller, but sometimes, depending on the type of deal you're buying and how the deal is negotiated with your realtor, you may be paying for the transfer taxes for the seller. Sometimes, and usually when we see that, it's with you buying a short sale or a previously foreclosed on home. Now, a couple things. Closing costs, they run the gamut. So all 7 of those different individual entities you have to pay for. Those are your closing costs. So you have down payment and closing costs, and those 2 things together are what you would have to bring to closing if you didn't talk to the lender up front and you didn't work with the lender and your realtor to negotiate the best outcome for you. So a lot of times we have questions and people are like, well, Bryan, how come this lender over here said that I can get a loan from them with no closing costs? Well, there's 3 ways that you can pay for closing costs. First is you can have the lender pay for them. And most people don't talk about this, and they don't know that this is actually happening, and this is what is going on with their specific loan. But what ends up happening sometimes is, a lender is going to say they'll pay for the processing and underwriting and credit and flood fees that you have to pay to the lender. And the only way that they can pay for that as a lender is to increase your interest rate. And depending on how much money you're actually asking to cover, well, that cost could be anywhere from an interest rate that's higher by 0.25 to as much as 1% higher, sometimes more than that. So if your goal is to achieve the lowest interest rate, having the lender pay for your closing costs will absolutely not achieve that for you. The second most popular way, and probably the best way to have your closing costs paid, is to have the seller pay for them. So let's say that looking at a home that you want to purchase, you need to have $7,500 in total across all the different 7 entities that you have to pay for closing costs, and you're buying a $250,000 home. Well, that's about 3% of the purchase price. What we usually see is if your purchase price is $250,000 or $300,000 or less, you're probably going to see closing costs of about, give or take, 3% in total. And then if you're over that $300,000 mark, $350,000, $400,000 or more, you'll typically see closing costs of 2 to 3%, so give or take 2.5%. So that being said, if you needed to bring $10,000 to closing for your down payment plus $7,500 for your closing costs, the second most popular way and the best way to do this is to have the seller pay the closing costs for you. So when you buy that $250,000 home, you would ask the seller for a 3% closing cost credit. And if they agreed to that, that really means they're going to give you $7,500 at closing, which means now that if your $10,000 down payment is what you needed, that's what you would effectively bring to closing. Now understand that if you ask the buyer to pay for the seller to pay for your closing costs, the seller is not going to get $250,000. They're going to get $250,000 minus the $7,500. So they're really going to get $242,500. That's important to understand because a lot of times the sellers, especially in our market, there's multiple offers. And if they're going to accept your offer, if you are a quote-unquote better risk for them as a buyer or as a seller, then they may go with your offer, but they're going to ask you to increase the purchase price. So instead of $250,000, you might have to pay $257,500 to get the $7,500 closing cost credit. So the seller nets the $250,000. So the third way is you just bring in your $7,500. So if you had $10,000 down payment, $7,500 for closing costs, you would have to write a check for $17,500 to buy that home. So I hope this is helpful. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of ways to go about this process, but there's a very few ways that we've come across that we can help you and make sure that we get the outcome, financially speaking, that you're looking for. So what we recommend is we talk about what your financial picture looks like up front, how much of a purchase price you're looking for, and how much money you need to bring to closing. And if that number is higher than what you're comfortable with, then we can look at negotiating and making sure your realtor knows that you need that closing cost credit to achieve the outcome financially that we're looking to. If you have questions, you know of anybody that's having issues with this, or you'd like to discuss it or have us look at something or run numbers for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Our direct number is 847-603-4778. Have an awesome day.